Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. This issue, we will interpret A Mind at Play for you. This is the biography of Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, and an American scientist. It tells the story of how this genius created the information age and how he, through his intellectual games, changed the lives of all of humanity. In the history of science, Shannon is considered a genius on par with Newton and Einstein. According to some American scholars, while Einstein founded the theory of relativity, he did not usher us into the era of relativity. In contrast, Shannon founded information theory and ushered humanity into the information age. Therefore, Shannon's impact is greater than Einstein's. This claim may seem exaggerated, so let's examine whether Shannon's contributions are indeed that significant. The foundation of the information age consists of two key elements: computers and the Internet, and both are closely tied to Shannon. Shannon transformed computers from simple calculation tools into complex thinking tools. It was Shannon's research that paved the way for the emergence of the Internet. Do you think his impact is substantial? Interestingly, Shannon was not your typical bookish scientist. He had a playful side to his life. He enjoyed tinkering with various strange inventions, such as creating an electronic mouse that could navigate mazes. He even engaged in juggling at serious scientific conferences, akin to a circus clown, and used rigorous mathematical methods to analyze juggling, producing academic papers on the subject. Many of his seemingly playful inventions, years later, inspired groundbreaking innovations. The authors of this biography, Soni and Rob Goodman, one a top-notch magazine editor, and the other a top-tier writer and scholar, bring Shannon's remarkable life to life in their biography and show us the thinking of a genius. Next, we will divide the discussion into three parts to delve into Shannon's life. Firstly, I will introduce Shannon's two significant contributions that ushered humanity into the information age. Secondly, we will explore what Shannon relied on to make these contributions. Thirdly, I will introduce the other side of Shannon, beyond his academic achievements, which is his playful approach to life. Let's start with the first part, discussing the two crucial contributions Shannon made for humanity. But before delving into this, let me briefly introduce the genius's life journey. Shannon was born in 1916 in a small town in Michigan, USA. He received a good education from a young age, with decent grades but not exceptional. What set him apart, however, was his knack for tinkering with machines and exploring small inventions. He once built an elevator to lift his sister to a high place. Shannon's life trajectory seemed somewhat ordinary. He pursued his undergraduate studies at the University of Michigan and then pursued graduate studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. At each stage, he simultaneously earned 2 degrees, one in mathematics and the other in engineering, representing his dual interests and talents. After graduation, Shannon joined the mathematics division of Bell Labs, a globally renowned corporate research institution. After working there for over 30 years, he returned to MIT as a professor. By this time, he had achieved great success, earned numerous awards, but continued to lead a simple and modest life, continuing his childhood hobbies of tinkering with various small machines and inventions until his passing at the age of 85. This brief life story may seem somewhat uneventful, but Shannon's contributions were anything but simple. He essentially started from scratch and opened the door to the information age for humanity. So, what problems did Shannon help humanity solve? The primary ones are twofold. First, in the realm of computers, he transformed them from mere calculating tools into thinking tools capable of solving a variety of problems. Second, in the field of communication, he abstracted all sorts of diverse information into numbers, introduced the concept of bit, and developed a comprehensive framework for measuring and transmitting information. This pushed forward the creation of various modern communication methods, including mobile communication and the Internet, which have become indispensable for all of us. Let's delve into each of these. Let's discuss Shannon's contributions in the field of computers first. In the early days of computer development, their functions were limited to mathematical calculations, serving as mere computational tools. So, who made them into versatile multitaskers? It was Claude Shannon. What did Shannon do? He wrote a paper that found the correct way to simulate human thinking with machines. This was a critical breakthrough. Let's break down the process. First, he organized thoughts into logical judgments, and then, based on a theory called Boolean algebra, which we won't go into detail about, he showed how these logical judgments could be transformed into mathematical operations consisting of ones and zeros, where true was represented by 1 and false by 0. At this point, Shannon told you that you could use the two states of electrical circuits, namely on and off, to represent 1 and 0, where on represented 1 and off represented 0. This allowed the use of circuits to simulate your logical judgments and thinking processes. What does this mean? It means that humans could design a machine that uses electrical circuits to make judgments and think, helping us solve various problems. When problems became more complex, you could simply increase the number of switches in the circuit. This is the basic principle behind modern computers helping humanity solve a wide range of problems. Shannon wasn't the inventor of the computer, but his brilliant paper transformed computers from simple calculating tools into versatile machines and set the direction for the development of modern computers. As technology advanced, the basic switch components in computer circuits evolved from vacuum tubes to transistors, and the number of switches became increasingly numerous and dense. Even the most advanced smartphone processors today, which are the size of your fingernail, contain billions of transistors, equivalent to billions of switches, allowing them to perform various complex tasks. However, they all fundamentally adhere to the principles described by Shannon in this paper. What's particularly astonishing is that this highly significant paper about computers and the information age was Shannon's master's thesis in electrical engineering at MIT. No wonder some scientists call it the most impressive master's thesis in history. Shannon wrote this masterpiece when he was just 22 years old. So, that's Shannon's contribution in the realm of computers. Next, let me introduce his major breakthrough in the field of communication. In 1948, a decade after completing his master's thesis, Shannon, at Bell Labs, authored another groundbreaking work that established information theory, ushering humanity into the information age. What problem did he solve this time? He discovered the essence of information, found a way to measure it, and proposed methods to enhance the quality of information transmission. In Shannon's era, with various communication methods being invented, people had begun to pay attention to the concept of information. From face-to-face conversations using language, to voice signals transmitted over telephone lines, and to images conveyed through television circuits, all of these seemed like forms of information. However, the fundamental question remained, what is information? No one could provide a clear answer, let alone a way to measure it. The prevailing approach at the time was to start with human language, analyzing the structure and meaning of language and trying to explore the essence of information while attempting to measure it. However, the results were unsatisfactory. This is where Shannon came in. He bypassed the intricacies of language and captured the essence of information. So, what is the essence of information? It's about reducing uncertainty. When I send you a piece of information, the amount of information it carries depends on how much uncertainty it helps you eliminate. According to Shannon's explanation, the sunrise tomorrow is common knowledge and already a form of certainty for you. Therefore, this statement doesn't help you reduce any additional uncertainty. It contains no information. On the other hand, whether there will be a solar eclipse tomorrow is highly uncertain. So, the statement that there will be a solar eclipse tomorrow helps you complete a process of turning uncertainty into certainty, making it information. The more uncertainty a statement helps you eliminate, the greater its information content. As a result, not only was the question of what the essence of information is resolved, but there also seemed to be a way to measure information. However, we all know that weight is measured in kilograms, length in meters, and energy in joules. So, what is the unit for measuring information? This didn't pose a challenge for Shannon. He said that since information is about reducing uncertainty, the most fundamental unit of information should be the most basic and simplest process of eliminating uncertainty. It's like telling you the result of flipping a coin, whether it lands heads up or tails up. So, Shannon found binary numbers. We all know that binary numbers are either 1 or 0. Therefore, transmitting a binary number to you is equivalent to completing a basic process of eliminating uncertainty by making a binary choice, which is turning uncertainty into certainty. This binary number containing two possible values became the basic unit for measuring information, and Shannon named it a bit. The information content of 1 bit is equivalent to the information represented by one binary digit. 8 bits are called a byte, and it can be represented using an uppercase letter B. The units we are all familiar with, such as MB, GB, TB, used to represent computer file sizes and memory storage capacity, are actually based on bits. You see, 10 years ago, Shannon turned electrical circuits into zeros and ones, and 10 years later, he turned information into zeros and ones. This way, not only could language information be transformed into numbers, but also sound, images, and all other forms of information could be digitized. The transmission processes of various types of information became unified. Regardless of whether the initial form was language, sound, or images, information, when sent from the sender, underwent an encoding process, becoming a series of binary numbers consisting of zeros and ones. Then, it was transmitted as a digital signal, and at the receiving end, it underwent a decoding process to be converted back to its original form for the information receiver. This is what we commonly refer to as digital communication. Whether it's through the internet or mobile wireless networks, whether it's text chatting, sending photos, transmitting audio, or video, it all follows this process. The significance of digitizing information goes beyond this. 10 years ago, Shannon transformed electrical circuits into numbers, making complex circuit design work a matter of solving mathematical equations. 10 years later, he turned information into numbers, and improving communication quality also became a matter of solving mathematical problems. This was a groundbreaking advancement. Before Shannon, humans spent considerable time, effort, and money trying countless methods to reduce the interference experienced during the transmission of communication signals and enhance communication quality. For example, to reduce the interference in telegraph signals transmitted through undersea cables, people spared no expense to install thick protective covers on the cables, but this only solved part of the problem. So, was there any way to achieve completely distortion-free information transmission? Nobody was confident until Shannon confidently declared in his paper that he had a solution. What was his solution? It certainly wasn't about adding thicker protective covers to cables. He believed that, theoretically, interference could never be completely eliminated. However, even if the interference caused some signal degradation, it was still possible to maintain the integrity of the information. It may sound somewhat baffling. How can signal degradation not result in information distortion? But if we think carefully, according to Shannon's theory, at this point, the signal inside the cable had already become digital. He used mathematical methods to prove that as long as you optimized the digital encoding method and added extra redundant digits, even if line interference caused a certain proportion of digital signal loss, the transmitted information could still remain intact. However, each line has its limits. If you reach those limits, no matter how you improve and optimize the encoding, you can't guarantee distortion-free transmission. The digital information transmission speed corresponding to this limit is called the Shannon limit. Today, we are continually working on improving information transmission speeds. Take mobile communication, for instance, from 3G to 4G and then to 5G. This is essentially an ongoing effort to approach the Shannon limit. The content mentioned above represents the essence of Shannon's information theory. He had insight into the nature of information, proposed methods and fundamental units for measuring information, and discovered ways to improve the quality of information transmission. It can be said that the fundamental characteristic of modern communication is digitization, and the theoretical foundation for communication digitization is Shannon's information theory. Everything you see today in terms of modern communication tools and methods, from the internet to mobile networks, essentially involves the transmission of digital information, all of which are applications of information theory. For every professional in the fields of computing and communication today, Shannon can be considered a founding figure. Furthermore, it's challenging to escape the influence of computers, smartphones, and the Internet in our daily lives, all of which are closely connected to Shannon's contributions. The discussion above covered the first part, where Shannon made significant contributions in both the fields of computing and communication, leading humanity into the information age. It's worth noting that Shannon authored 2 groundbreaking works when he was only in his early 30s. So, what conditions helped him make such remarkable contributions at a young age? Let's move on to the second part. What were the key factors behind Shannon's achievements? Even for a genius like Shannon, achieving such extraordinary accomplishments couldn't have been possible without external factors. Shannon lived during an era when the United States was replacing Britain as the world's leading superpower. Its national strength was booming, and science and technology were rapidly advancing. This provided an excellent environment for Shannon's success. Previous research results also served as building blocks for Shannon's breakthroughs. As we mentioned earlier, Shannon's achievements in computer theory are closely intertwined with Boolean algebra theory. However, among all the external conditions, 2 are particularly noteworthy: the impetus of World War II and a permissive research environment. Let's start with the impact of World War II. World War II was the most brutal war in human history, with casualties reaching up to 2 billion, and incalculable destruction. However, it also acted as a catalyst for technological development. Participating countries devoted vast resources to scientific and technological development to secure victory and gathered top scientists to conduct research, resulting in numerous achievements that continue to influence our lives today. What was the effect of World War II on Shannon? It can be said that his contributions in the fields of computing and communication were directly related to this war, especially in terms of communication. His experiences during World War II were a driving force in the creation of information theory, where everything was transformed into zeros and ones. What did Shannon do during World War II? Like many American scholars, Shannon answered the call to serve his country. Of course, such an exceptional individual couldn't serve as a frontline soldier. The U.S. military recognized his mathematical talents and assigned him a role where he could make the greatest contribution: a cryptanalyst. In this role, Shannon's performance was outstanding. He not only assisted the U.S. military and its allies in deciphering many German codes, gaining insight into the German forces' deployments and actions, which helped protect London from German bombing. He also helped the Allies establish secure encryption systems. Even the confidential conversations between Roosevelt and Churchill relied on Shannon for encryption. What specific contributions did Shannon make as a cryptanalyst? Many of them are still classified and have not been fully disclosed. However, what is known is that Shannon's work in this field transformed cryptography and decryption from specialized techniques into a genuine science with a theoretical foundation. What's more, the work in this field directly inspired Shannon's understanding of the nature of information. Just think about it. The process of encoding in cryptographic communication essentially involves transforming a language that you can understand into a sequence of digits that the enemy cannot decipher. This is a form of digitizing information. After World War II, Shannon, the cryptography expert, returned to Bell Labs to continue his research in communication. He continued his reflections from the war and ultimately completed the pioneering work in information theory. In addition to the impetus of the war, a permissive and free research environment also significantly aided Shannon. An example of this is Bell Labs, where Shannon worked for an extended period. Bell Labs is a renowned corporate research institution in the United States, founded in 1925, and to date, it has obtained over 25,000 patents. Major inventions like the transistor, laser, solar cells, fax machines, communication satellites, and mobile phones all trace their origins back to Bell Labs. What's particularly commendable is that even though it's a corporate-led research institution, it places a strong emphasis on fundamental research. As a result, 8 Nobel laureates have emerged from this institution. This aspect was of significant importance to Shannon. It's worth noting that Shannon worked at Bell Labs for more than 30 years, where he achieved numerous research accomplishments, including information theory. However, most of his contributions belong to the realm of fundamental theoretical research, which was challenging to directly translate into products and economic benefits. Yet, Bell Labs continued to support and encourage theoretical research that might not have immediate practical applications. For a genius like Shannon, this environment was akin to a paradise for research and contemplation. He had the freedom to choose his research direction, access substantial financial resources and various facilities, and could devote all his energy to thinking without worrying about KPIs or complex personnel relations. During that era, many American universities and research institutions had similar characteristics. This permissive and free research environment directly fueled an explosion of basic research results during that period, with Shannon's achievements being an integral part of this. Apart from the impetus from the war and the relaxed environment, Shannon's achievements also stem from his innate genius qualities. As a genius, he undoubtedly had exceptional intelligence. However, beyond that, Shannon possessed two outstanding advantages. One was his extraordinary capacity for abstract thinking. He could penetrate various external phenomena, grasp the essence of things, and abstract complex and variable concepts into the simplest and most fundamental forms. As mentioned earlier, when he pioneered computer theory, Shannon converted circuits and switches into sequences of zeros and ones. When developing information theory, he transformed language, text, images, and sound into sequences of zeros and ones. This was the essence that Shannon captured. Today, we live in the information age, and this age is essentially the digital age, where everything can be translated into digits. We have long since adopted this way of viewing the world, and the source of this thinking style is Shannon's genius in abstract thinking. Shannon's other advantage was his ability to let curiosity and interest drive his thinking. He had a famous saying, "The best results are often obtained by simple curiosity." For him, the initial drive to research computer theory and information theory stemmed from curiosity and sheer interest. He was more interested in understanding the subject rather than focusing on what could be achieved or whether it would yield products or economic benefits. However, starting from interest doesn't mean that he approached his research casually or without diligence. On the contrary, his intense and pure interest allowed him to remain singularly focused, unwavering in his determination, and determined to persist until he found answers. Take information theory, for instance. Turning information into zeros and ones was not the result of a sudden burst of inspiration due to interest. It took Shannon a grueling 8 years of intensive contemplation to solve this problem. He didn't concern himself with what products information theory might lead to. Many criticized this theory for lacking practical value, but he remained unfazed. The relaxed environment at Bell Labs was just what he needed to flourish. It wasn't until 2 to 3 decades later, with the widespread emergence of modern communication devices, that people realized the sheer power of this theory, which initially seemed like a mental exercise. The content above represents the second part, the factors contributing to Shannon's success. On the one hand, his personal qualities enabled him to abstract complex and variable concepts into the simplest fundamental principles. On the other hand, the impetus of war and a permissive research environment allowed him to thrive. In general, we might assume that such a successful scientist would be a venerable and dignified academic figure. However, the real-life Shannon had a playful side to his character, akin to living a life as a game. Third part. After writing his 2 groundbreaking works and pioneering 2 major theories, Shannon became an academic celebrity and received numerous awards. However, his primary interest appeared to shift towards the realm of juggling and entertainment. He dedicated much of his time to mastering and continually improving his juggling skills. He learned to ride a unicycle and engage in ball juggling games. At the age of 70, during a serious high-level academic conference, he was invited to give a speech, but instead, he took out 3 small balls from his pocket and started juggling. The audience was captivated, and the formally dressed scientists became fans, lining up to request his autograph. You might think that Shannon used juggling and entertainment as a way to relax and unwind from his research. This was not the case. Shannon once built several machines for juggling and had even developed the rudimentary form of a humanoid robot. Moreover, He once again showcased his knack for abstracting everything into digits by attempting to establish a mathematical theory to determine how many balls a person could juggle simultaneously. In addition to his juggling pursuits, Shannon continued to nurture his childhood passion for small machines and inventions, even after gaining fame. In comparison to attending classes at MIT and academic conferences worldwide, he seemed to prefer tinkering with machines in his backyard, creating many items that appeared to be mere toys with little practical value. However, his playful inventions sparked significant innovations in the years to come. For instance, he constructed the world's first machine capable of playing chess against humans, which utilized 150 relay switches to calculate the movements of chess pieces. While this machine's chess-playing skills were not particularly advanced, it did inspire future generations, eventually leading to the creation of AlphaGo, which defeated all human Go champions. He also built an artificial mouse that navigated mazes to find cheese. Using 75 relay switches, the mouse recorded its path choices and continued trying different routes until it successfully found the cheese. Once it learned the correct path, it could subsequently make that choice without further experimentation. For Shannon, it was an ingeniously designed toy. Nevertheless, it already demonstrated rudimentary learning capabilities, which later influenced research in artificial intelligence. Shannon was even an inventor of wearable technology. In 1961, he and his colleague Sop made a small computer the size of a cigarette pack, concealed in a pocket, with a switch hidden in their shoe, operated by the big toe. What was this device used for? It predicted the outcomes of roulette games at casinos, calculating the probability of where the ball would land on the wheel. Armed with this device, they impressed many in Las Vegas. However, they ceased their attempts after several trials due to the fear of attracting the attention of the mafia. Nevertheless, such devices continued to evolve and led to what we now know as Apple Watches and fitness trackers. When Shannon tinkered with these small inventions, his mindset was remarkably similar to his approach to theoretical research. Both stemmed from pure curiosity and interest, with no consideration of practical value upon completion. For him, there was no intrinsic separation between games and work. It was precisely his carefree attitude, treating research and contemplation as games, that allowed his genius to fully flourish and ultimately transformed human life. So, in summary, the essence of this book has been conveyed. Firstly, Shannon laid the theoretical foundation for modern computing, turning computers from mere calculating tools into versatile machines. He also proposed information theory, capturing the essence of information, allowing it to be measured, and introducing methods to enhance information transmission. Through these two contributions, he ushered humanity into the information age, enabling our digital way of life. Secondly, Shannon's achievements relied on the impetus from World War II, the permissive and relaxed research environment at Bell Labs, and his own innate genius qualities, including his exceptional abstract thinking abilities, and the instinct to be driven by curiosity and interest. Thirdly, Shannon was a highly entertaining individual. He loved juggling and tinkering with various small inventions, inspiring major innovations along the way. As a final tidbit, during World War II, Shannon met with a fellow genius multiple times due to the alliance between the United States and the United Kingdom. This individual was Alan Turing, known as the father of computer science. Both were researching cryptography, and their meetings inspired one another, leading to significant advances in the field. However, while Turing passed away at the early age of 41, Shannon lived a long life and reached the age of 85. In the world of information science, a prestigious award called the Shannon Award was established, equivalent to the Nobel Prize in Basic Science and the Turing Award in Computer Science. In 1972, Shannon was still alive and unarguably became the first recipient of the Shannon Award, attending the ceremony himself. This practice of receiving an award named after oneself later became humorously referred to as the Shannon routine. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.